It began with a lie, a simple lie carried on the humid Detroit air one sweltering summer evening, a lie that would bloom far beyond any expectation. And so began the story of a boy who left behind golden shovels for calloused hands, a forgotten garden that once promised salvation, and the gentle faith that transformed lifeless soil into a triumph of hope. Detroit wore its history on its streets, concrete skeletons of former factories, abandoned storefronts adorned with faded graffiti, and entire blocks silent except for the low hum of passing cars. Yet in that hush, dreams still flickered, and in a derelict lot on the city's outskirts, where dusty pavement gave way to patches of stubborn weeds, knelt a young man. His hoodie was frayed at the cuffs, his once pampered palms blistered from relentless digging. His name was Barron Trump, though nobody here would have believed it. He was simply Joe, a volunteer with no headlines chasing him. When the world discovered he'd vanished days before his 21st birthday, rumors exploded. Had he run from a scandal? Abandoned a life of luxury? But in truth, he'd run toward something he didn't yet understand. Barron's grandmother's words echoed in his mind. Faith without work is just noise, Barron. Plant seeds, even when no one's watching. He'd clung to that final piece of advice like a lifeline. Now, each time he drove his shovel into the hard ground, he felt her spirit pushing him forward. But seeds demanded more than soil. They needed purpose. Weeks stretched on, and the abandoned community garden refused to yield easily. Its original name, Jose's Promise, was barely legible on a cracked sign leaning askew near a rusted chain-link fence. Where vegetables once thrived, only shards of glass and piles of rubble remained. A mural depicting Jose himself, a smiling man crowned with sunflowers, was peeling, half lost to time. Local kids would dart by on their bikes, barely glancing at the derelict lot that once fed an entire neighborhood. Yet day after day, Barron pressed on. Each strike of his shovel sent a cloud of dust swirling into the hot Detroit sun. Sometimes, he'd curse under his breath. Other times, he'd mutter prayers he hadn't known he carried. Bent fences, dried-out plots, rotting wood. Each disheartening discovery tested his resolve. Still, he persisted. Then, on a rain-lashed morning, a clank of metal against shovel blades startled him. Beneath a collapsed greenhouse lay a rusted lockbox. Barron pried it open, water trickling through his fingers as he lifted 3 items. A handful of heirloom seed packets, a Bible swollen by old rain, and a single sheet of paper that read, "To whoever finds this, plant these seeds, but only if you're willing to stay." As though guided by an invisible hand, the Bible fell open to Galatians 6:9. "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." A sentence underlined in fading ink, a promise from someone who believed in the power of tending the earth. Barron ran his thumb gently over the words, feeling a surge of determination rise within him. He set the seeds aside, brushed the dirt from the pages, and stood in the downpour, letting the rain wash away his doubts. He would stay. Days later, as the sky cleared and the Detroit sun once again blazed hot, Barron was on his knees in the freshly turned soil, carefully placing those heirloom seeds, tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, an echo of the garden's former glory. His back ached. His hands bled, yet there was a peace in the methodical act of planting, of believing in something unseen. That was when Marisol arrived. She had Jose's eyes, and sorrow weighed on her slender shoulders. The mother of 3 worked triple shifts to keep her kids clothed and fed, Yet she still found time to stand before the battered fence, looking at what remained of her father's legacy. She expected to find only ghosts. Instead, she found a stranger attempting to resurrect what she thought was lost forever. "Why?" she asked simply, the question tumbling from her lips before she could stop it. Barron rose slowly, offering her the lockbox. She peered inside, her tears splashing onto the swollen Bible and the hand-scrawled note. "He said the garden was his prayer," she murmured, voice trembling. "That feeding others was how he spoke to God." Barron nodded, his own chest tight with emotion. He finally understood. True faith wasn't about grandeur or spotlight. It was about the quiet persistence of planting seeds in broken places. Little by little, the garden revived. Tiny green shoots pushed through the dirt, leaves unfurling in a proud salute to the warm sun. Children laughed as they discovered strawberries ripening under sprawling leaves, red juice staining their small fingers. Corn stalks shot up like soldiers standing guard. Tomatoes swelled heavy on the vines, their tangy scent a reminder of simpler times. In a neighborhood so used to decay, the sudden bloom of color felt like a miracle. But in a city plagued by harsh realities, hope can draw unwanted attention. A slick-talking developer soon arrived, stepping from a glossy black car in an impeccably tailored suit. Waving bulldozer permits like weapons, he sneered, "This lot's worth millions. Your little weeds will be ash by Monday." Just like that, hearts that had begun to soar plummeted. Marisol wondered if all their labor had been for nothing. Where would the children play? What would happen to her father's dream? That night, under the glow of a street lamp, Barron sank to his knees in the dirt he'd fought so hard to reclaim. Clasping the old Bible against his chest, he reflected on his grandmother's words and the verse etched into the pendant she'd given him. Matthew 6:3. "Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." Sometimes faith calls for quiet, decisive action. Barron pulled out his phone and made a single call. By morning, the developer's looming threat vanished. The land, it turned out, had been hastily purchased through an anonymous shell company, Lily's Promise. Named in honor of Marisol's youngest child, no Trump name appeared on any legal document. No headlines trumpeted a billionaire rescue. There was only a line of text on the deed. "Faith grows where we plant it." Marisol asked no questions, though suspicion flickered in her eyes. Then, she discovered a single shovel in the tool shed, etched with the initials BT. She let her fingertips trace over those letters and felt a sudden rush of gratitude. Some truths, she realized, are meant to remain sacred. As autumn crept into Detroit, the once desolate lot glowed with life. Sunflowers towered above the fence line, their bright heads bobbing in the crisp breeze. Families from nearby streets gathered at dusk, weaving through rows of zucchini and lettuce, filling baskets to feed their own households. Quiet pockets of conversation mingled with the sound of children's laughter. A hush of reverence fell when Marisol's daughter Lily placed Jose's Bible on a small wooden altar, built from salvaged planks that still smelled faintly of earth and sun. On the final page of that Bible, in Barron's neat handwriting, Marisol found a new message. Scholarship fund in Jose's name. For Lily. For all who believe. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she understood the magnitude of that gift. A gift of hope, of education, of a future. And that very night, Barron Trump slipped away into the city's embrace. His hood pulled low, he vanished as quietly as he had come, leaving the garden a gleaming testament to what faith and hard work could accomplish. Marisol watched him go, her mind filled with the memory of her father's words. Miracles where Work gloves, Mia, and sometimes they look like strangers. Somewhere across the wide sprawl of the city, a grandmother's pendant glinted in the half-light, a silent reminder of the mission that had guided Barron's every step. Somewhere seeds nestled in the earth, biding their time for the next spring. And somewhere, a young man who had once been lost found a deeper truth, that faith doesn't reside in gold-leafed cathedrals or endless bank accounts. No, faith is forged in the sweat and humility of the everyday, in the quiet determination to sow seeds in a place everyone else has abandoned. It lives in the dirt under your nails, the ache in your muscles after a day's work, and the unwavering hope that what you plant, both in the earth and in the hearts of others, will one day flourish. Barron learned this truth the hard way. He arrived with a lie, hidden behind the name Joe, but he left behind a much more profound reality, that a single garden in the heart of Detroit could grow something far more valuable than vegetables. It could grow community. It could grow second chances, and it could grow faith that outlasts any season. And so, beneath the fading autumn sky, the garden stood as a quiet beacon, its soil rich with possibility, its rows heavy with harvest, and its spirit unbroken. For those who paused to look really look. The greatest lesson was clear. Faith is found in the dirt, in the sweat, and in the silent act of planting seeds for a future we might never see.